Welcome to Daily Review, your daily dose of literary exploration. We dive into books that spark curiosity and ignite growth. While our passion often leads us to nonfiction reads that empower and improve your life, no book is off limits. From gripping thrillers to insightful memoirs and compelling fiction to historical accounts, we're here to share and discuss all the interesting reads we discover. Tune in for your next great book idea. Thank you so much for tuning in to Daily Review. We truly appreciate you joining us for your daily dose of literary exploration. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue to share these amazing books with you. If you're enjoying what you hear, please consider taking a moment to subscribe, rate, like, and comment on any of the platforms you're listening from. This really helps support our channel and allows us to get better and bring you even more great content. If today's review sparked your interest and you're ready to dive into a copy of the book, please consider using the link in our description to make your purchase. Not only does it make it easy for you to get your hands on the book, but it also directly supports our channel and the author, allowing us to keep bringing you more great content. Thanks again for being a part of the Daily Review community. Okay, so today we're doing a deep dive into something that honestly sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, but it's not. It's been happening kind of quietly, but very profoundly, to a whole generation, right under our noses, really.
It really has. It's this huge transformation of childhood, unlike anything we've ever seen before. And maybe the best way to grasp just how big it is to start with a little thought experiment. Might sound a bit wild at first.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's hear it.
All right, imagine, right now, some big tech company announces a plan. They're going to send kids, young children, to Mars.
Wow, okay. To Mars.
To Mars.
Yeah.
Probably a one-way trip. And here's the kicker. They haven't really done the safety homework. No serious research into the long-term effects. Parental consent. It's more like a checkbox exercise, not genuine agreement.
That sounds completely insane. Who would agree to that?
Exactly. And think about the physical side. We grow up with Earth's gravity. Astronauts, even short-term in space, they face bone density loss, muscle wasting, fluid shifts that mess with their eyes and brains.
I've read about that. It's serious.
Very serious. Mars only has about 38% of Earth's gravity. So kids raised there, they likely face severe skeletal issues, maybe deformities, huge risks to their hearts, eyes, brains. And in our scenario, the planners just kind of glossed over all that, didn't really factor it in.
No way. You'd never let your kid go. A company couldn't possibly do that, could they? The liability would be astronomical. We'd all be furious.
You would think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah. And yet, you're saying this somehow connects to what's actually happened.
In a way, yes. That fundamental disregard for the long-term developmental harm, even if unintentional this time, it's actually a pretty good parallel for what happened when certain technologies arrived and reshaped childhood.
Ah, okay. I think I see where you're going. This is the great rewiring of childhood you mentioned?
That's the term, yeah. It's like an entire generation grew up in this alien environment, totally different from how humans developed for millennia.
Yeah.
You can trace some roots back to maybe the 80s and changing parenting styles.
Okay.
But the really intense, unprecedented change, that hit fast, mostly between about 2010 and 2015.
And that's what we're diving into today. We want to understand how these, often well-meaning tech advancements, plus these bigger shifts in society, kind of accidentally created what people are calling the anxious generation. We're talking Gen Z, mostly born after 1995.
Right. And crucially, we want to explore what you, the listener, can actually do about it.
Exactly. And just for context, our insights today are drawn from a lot of research, especially the work of social psychologists like Jonathan Haidt. His earlier books, like The Happiness Hypothesis, The Righteous Mind, and The Coddling of the American Mind, they really laid some important groundwork here.
Absolutely. They help frame the problem.
So when you talk to parents these days, especially parents of teens, it almost always comes back to the devices, right? Smartphones, social media, video games.
Oh, it's inevitable.
Yeah, there's this feeling of constant conflict, like you're trying to hold back this massive tide that just wants to pull your family under. It's not always a diagnosed mental illness, but there's this deep worry, isn't there, that something isn't right, that kids are missing out on actual childhood.
Yeah, the hours just pile up online. And sometimes the stories parents share are much darker, really heartbreaking. You hear parents say they feel like they've literally lost their child to the screen.
Gosh.
I remember hearing about a girl, Emily, 14. Her parents were desperate. They saw Instagram was really hurting her, so they tried monitoring software. But life just became this constant battle. Emily kept finding ways around it.
Oh, man.
Then one time, she actually disabled the monitoring on her mom's phone. And when her mom tried to reinstall it, Emily threatened suicide.
Oh my God, that's terrifying for a parent.
Absolutely terrifying. Her mom said the only times they saw their normal daughter was during a 6-week, totally phone-free summer camp.
Wow.
Or when they swapped her smartphone for just a basic flip phone for a couple of months. It just shows the power these things have.
That's incredibly stark. What a horrible choice for parents to face.
It really is. And for boys, the stories often center more around, say, immersive video games, sometimes combined with porn, unfortunately. I heard from a carpenter recently about his son, James, also 14, mild autism.
Okay.
James was doing okay before COVID hit, school, judo, everything. But then school shut down, and they got him a PlayStation. Seemed okay at first, kept him busy, connected with some friends online.
Yeah, a lot of parents did that.
Totally understandable.
Yeah.
But James started playing Fortnite. More and more, hours and hours. And his dad said that's when all the depression, anger, and laziness came out.
Oh, no.
Yeah. When they tried to take the electronics away, James had what looked like severe withdrawal. Super irritable, aggressive, wouldn't leave his room for days.
Wow, like actual withdrawal.
It sounded like it. And the parents felt completely trapped. Their question was, he doesn't have any friends other than online ones, so how much can we cut him off? It's a brutal dilemma.
That fear, that feeling trapped. I hear that from so many parents. They don't want this phone-based childhood. But the world has changed so much, it feels like if you resist, you're basically sentencing your kid to social isolation.
Exactly. And look, this isn't just a few sad stories. While some people were initially skeptical, asking, is this crisis really real? The data is just overwhelming now. Before the early 2010s, not much sign of a big teen mental illness problem brewing.
Okay.
Then, almost overnight, things changed dramatically.
The data really paints a picture, doesn't it? Sort of synchronized nosedive in mental health starting around 2012.
Undeniable. You see this sudden, really large spike in major depressive episodes for U.S. teens ages 12 to 17. It starts right around 2012.
Like a switch flipped.
Almost. Researchers call it the hockey stick shape. Just shoots straight up. Now, the absolute numbers were higher for girls, meaning more girls were affected. But the relative increase is pretty similar for both boys and girls, about 150% higher, like 2.5 times more common than before 2010.
2.5 times? That's huge.
It's massive. And it wasn't just one group. It hit across all races, all social classes. By 2020, get this, 1 in 4 American teenage girls had experienced a major depressive episode in the past year.
1 in 4. That's staggering.
It really is. And it wasn't just the younger teens, right?
Yeah, college kids too.
Yep. Same pattern. Big increases in anxiety and depression diagnoses among U.S. college undergrads all through the 2010s. So this thing follows them into young adulthood.
Wow.
And what's really telling is how concentrated this is in Gen Z. If you look at reported nervousness, the youngest group, the ones starting college around 2014, their rates just shot up, feeling nervous most or all of the time. Older groups didn't show that same sharp rise before 2012.
So it really points to something changing for that generation specifically.
Exactly. It's not just society getting more stressed overall. Something unique happened to Gen Z.
I do remember the skepticism early on there. People saying, well, maybe kids are just more willing to talk about anxiety now, or maybe we're just labeling normal teenage angst as a disorder. How do you know it's more than just reporting changes?
That's a really important question. And look, increased willingness to report is part of it, and that's actually a good thing, reducing stigma. But it doesn't explain the whole story, not even close.
So what's the evidence it's a real crisis?
The crucial evidence comes from behavioral changes, things that are much harder to explain away as just changes in reporting. We're talking about sharp rises in self-harm, NSSI, non-suicidal self-injury, and tragically, soaring suicide rates, especially for young adolescent girls. Their suicide rates started climbing around 2008, but then it really surged after 2012. Between 2010 and 2021, the rate for girls aged 10-14 went up by 167%.
Oh my goodness, 167%. It's devastating. So when you see the self-reported suffering and these tragic behavioral outcomes rising together in lockstep, that tells you something truly profound and negative happened in the lives of adolescents in the early 2010s. It confirms this is a genuine, severe mental health crisis.
That is incredibly sobering. And you mentioned this isn't just happening in the U.S.
No, absolutely not. That's another key piece of the puzzle. This is a synchronized international increase. We see the same disturbing patterns emerging around the same time in the Nordic countries, across Europe, in Australia, New Zealand. basically many developed nations.
Wow, so it's global.
It's global, and that's really important because it helps us rule out explanations that are specific to just one country, like maybe blaming it only on the U.S. economy or U.S. politics or school shootings here.
Right, because those wouldn't explain the same rise in, say, Norway or the UK. Exactly. And things like the 2008 financial crisis. Yeah. If that was the main driver, you'd expect millennials, who were older teens and young adults then, to have been hit hardest in their teen years. But the rates didn't spike like Gen Z's did later.
Okay, that makes sense.
So the global nature of this forces us to ask, what changed everywhere for adolescents right around the same time? What was that common factor? The core takeaway here is the problem is real, it's bad, and it's global.
Okay, so we've established this alarming, synchronized global surge in anxiety and depression in Gen Z. Now let's get into the why.
It really does feel, like you said, like this generation became test subjects for a totally new way of growing up, almost like being raised on Myers, detached from the real-world interactions humans evolved for.
That's a good way to put it. And the Great Rewiring, it's not just one single thing. It's really the collision of two huge trends. The first one is what we could call underprotection in the virtual world.
Underprotection online. Okay.
Think about the tech timeline. The 2000s, high-speed internet spreads like wildfire. 2007, the iPhone arrives. That's huge. Game changer.
Totally. Then 2009, you get the like button, the retweet button. That sounds small, but fundamentally changed online social dynamics. Made things more performative, more viral, often more toxic.
Yeah. The public metrics.
Right. Then 2010, smartphones get front-facing cameras. Selfie culture starts. 2012, Facebook buys Instagram. Suddenly, image-based platforms explode.
Oh.
By 2012, 2013, it felt like every kid was getting a smartphone and an Instagram account.
Yeah.
Constant connection, constant comparison.
It happened so fast, like just a few years.
Incredibly fast.
Yeah.
And this shift created a stark contrast between how humans interacted for millennia and how they started interacting in this new virtual space.
Can you break down that contrast, real world versus virtual world?
Sure. Real-world interaction, the kind we evolved for over millions of years, is first embodied. We use our whole bodies, posture, expressions, tone to communicate. We pick up subtle cues.
Okay. Makes sense.
Second, it's synchronous. It happens in real time. There's a flow, a rhythm, back and forth. You learn timing, turn-taking.
Right, a dance.
Kind of. Third, it's usually one-to-one or one-to-several. You're focused on a small group. And finally, it happens in communities with a high bar for entry and exit. You invest in relationships. You have to repair conflicts because leaving is costly. There are real social consequences.
Okay, embodied, synchronous, focused, committed relationships.
Got it. How does the virtual world compare?
Almost the opposite on every point. Virtual interaction, which is only decades old, is often disembodied. Just words on a screen, maybe an avatar. You don't need a physical body. Your interaction partner could even be an AI someday. It's heavily asynchronous, texting, posting. You can craft your message perfectly, respond hours later. It lacks that real-time flow.
Yeah, you lose the immediacy.
Totally. Communication is often one-to-many. You're broadcasting to potentially hundreds or thousands, often anonymously. You're managing multiple conversations at once. And finally, the communities have a low bar for entry and exit. Don't like someone, block them. Tired of the group, just leave. Relationships can feel disposable.
That is a fundamentally different social landscape. Completely different. And the core idea here is that the virtual world, for all its connectivity, offers a very different, often much thinner kind of social experience than the rich, complex interactions of the real world.
So you have these kids, their brains are developing incredibly rapidly during adolescence, and they're suddenly immersed in this totally new, disembodied, asynchronous world. And you mentioned tech companies were actively hooking them using psychological tricks.
Yes, and that's not hyperbole. Driven by engagement metrics, time on site, clicks, shares, these companies employed sophisticated psychological techniques. They figured out how to keep users, including vulnerable kids, glued to the screen.
How?
By targeting those developing brains during that sensitive period of puberty when neural pathways are being rapidly formed, they basically unleash this fire hose of addictive content directly into kids' eyes and ears.
Wow.
And this constant stream displaced the things kids needed for healthy development: physical play, face-to-face socializing, sleep. So these design choices, optimizing for engagement above all else, ended up rewiring childhood on a massive scale.
Okay, so that's the underprotection online part. But you said there were two trends. The second one sounds almost opposite. A greenhouse effect of overprotection in the real world.
It does sound contradictory, doesn't it?
Gotcha.
But these two trends tragically work together. The second major plot line is this shift, starting earlier, maybe back in the 80s, toward overprotecting children in the physical world, restricting their freedom, their autonomy.
How does that play in?
Well, think about free play. Unstructured, kid-directed play. It's absolutely critical for healthy development in all mammals, but especially humans.
Why is it so important?
It's like practice for life. Those little challenges, the small risks, the arguments over rules, figuring things out on their own. It's like an inoculation. A scraped knee teaches caution. Negotiating turns teaches social skills. These small setbacks build resilience for bigger challenges later.
So we needed those little bumps and bruises, literally and figuratively. But that started vanishing.
Exactly. Free play, kids just roaming the neighborhood, playing unsupervised. That started declining steadily from the 1980s, and it really picked up speed in the 90s.
Why? What drove that?
A lot of it was rising fear. Fear of abduction, fear of predators, often amplified by media stories, even though statistically, the risks weren't necessarily higher. And also, maybe a decline in that feeling of community cohesion. You know, the eyes on the street, neighbors looking out for each other's kids. That seemed to fade.
So parents felt they had to keep kids close, supervised, indoors.
Right. The default shifted from let them play outside to keep them inside unless an adult is watching closely. This fear pushed kids indoors, often toward screens, even before smartphones were ubiquitous.
And this ties into concepts you call concept creep and safetyism. Tell us about those.
Yeah, concept creep is a term from psychologist Nick Haslam. It describes how concepts related to harm or pathology tend to expand over time. They expand downward to include more minor things and outward to cover new phenomena. Think about words like trauma, addiction, abuse. Their definitions have broadened considerably, and a key one is safety. For a long time, safety meant physical safety. But starting around the 80s, the idea of emotional safety started gaining traction. Its usage increased something like 600% between 1985 and 2010.
Wow. So safety expanded beyond just physical harm. That sounds good on the surface, right?
It sounds good, but it can lead to what Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff called safetyism. That's when safety, especially emotional safety, becomes the paramount value, overriding other important goals, like learning, exploration, or developing resilience.
How does that manifest?
You see it in things like overly restrictive rules on playgrounds. Remember that school in Berkeley with rules about how to play tag? Or needing adult refs for touch football?
Yeah, taking the kid-managed conflict out of it.
Exactly. Kids need to learn to manage those little conflicts themselves. Or look at survey data on parental attitudes. In 2015, parents said, on average, kids shouldn't play unsupervised in their own front yard until age 10. 10. Stay home alone for an hour. Age 12. Go to a public park alone. Age 14. That's a massive shift from, say, the 70s or 80s.
Definitely. So kids are getting less and less experience navigating the world independently. What does that do to them psychologically? You talk about discover mode versus defend mode.
Right. Our brains have these two fundamental operating systems. There's the behavioral activation system, or BAS, I call it discover mode. Kicks in when we see opportunities, possibilities. It fuels curiosity, exploration, positive emotion.
Okay, discover mode. Go explore.
Then there's the behavioral inhibition system, or BIS, defend mode. This activates when we perceive threats. It floods us with stress hormones, narrows our focus, makes us vigilant, anxious, ready to fight or flee.
And you're saying Gen Z got stuck in?
Defend mode. Way too much. Because they were shielded from manageable risks and challenges in the real world, they didn't get to practice overcoming fear and building confidence. And then the virtual world bombarded them with social threats, comparison, judgment, exclusion. So they end up chronically wary, anxious, scanning for threats instead of seeking out experiences.
So overprotection in the real world didn't make them safer, it made them more anxious.
Paradoxically, yes. It prevented them from developing the skills and confidence needed to feel safe and competent. The core idea, limiting real-world independence, inadvertently cultivates anxiety.
Which brings us to anti-fragility. You say kids aren't just resilient, they're anti-fragile. What's the difference?
Anti-fragility, a concept popularized by Nassim Taleb, goes beyond resilience. Resilient things resist shocks and stay the same. Anti-fragile things actually get stronger from shocks, challenges, stressors, failures.
Like bones getting stronger with impact or muscles with exercise?
Exactly. Or the immune system getting stronger from exposure to germs. Kids are like that. They need to encounter setbacks, solve problems, take small risks, even get hurt sometimes, to develop strength, competence, and confidence. Overprotection makes them fragile.
That makes so much sense, like a tree needs wind to grow strong roots.
Perfect analogy. That's why kids naturally seek out risk in their play. climbing a bit higher, swinging a bit faster, wrestling. They're not being reckless, they're calibrating. They're pushing their boundaries just enough to master fear and build skills.
Like your dog Wilma you mentioned.
Yeah. She's constantly finding little challenges on walks, testing herself, gaining confidence. Old playgrounds, maybe with those slightly dangerous metal spinners, actually allowed for that kind of self-testing. Minor injuries were possible, teaching valuable lessons.
Unlike today's super safe, often kind of boring playgrounds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Play researcher Moriana Brusoni says the goal shouldn't be as safe as possible, but as safe as necessary. Unstructured physical play actually has lower injury rates than organized sports, but far greater developmental benefits because kids are in charge.
So trying to make everything perfectly safe backfires.
It often does. And this connects back to the virtual world. People ask, can online risks build anti-fragility? Mostly, no. Real-world play offers unique benefits, physical feedback, embodied social learning, like how to apologize face-to-face, how to read body language.
Okay.
Online risks are different. A mistake can go viral, be permanent. The consequences can feel huge and overwhelming, often coming from strangers with no clear path to resolution.
Yeah.
That doesn't build resilience. It often just ramps up the anxiety. The takeaway, kids need real-world challenges, including manageable risks, to become capable and confident.
Okay, so we have this perfect storm. Kids underprotected online, overprotected in reality, entering adolescence, a critical brain development phase in this completely new environment. What are the specific foundational harms this phone-based childhood causes? You mentioned brain rewiring.
Yeah, that's central. The brain hits about 90% of its adult size by age 5, sure. But puberty, that's a massive period of reorganization, ages 11, 13 for girls, 14, 15 for boys, roughly. Huge amounts of pruning, getting rid of unused connections and myelination, insulating the important pathways to make them faster.
So the brain is literally reshaping itself based on experience during those years.
Massively. The phrase neurons that fire together, wire together is never truer than during adolescence. Whatever kids repeatedly do, playing soccer, learning piano, or scrolling TikTok for hours, shapes the physical structure of their brains for life.
So if screen time dominates?
Those pathways get reinforced, potentially crowding out development in other crucial areas. Plus, chronic stress during this sensitive window can literally tip a vulnerable adolescent into a full-blown mental disorder, anxiety, depression, eating disorders. When safetyism already limited real-world experience, the smartphone became this second experience blocker, pulling them even further away from the embodied synchronous world their brains expected.
Okay, so let's break down the harms. You identify 4 big ones. What's the first?
The first, and maybe the most obvious, is social deprivation.
Deprivation, even though they're constantly connected online.
Yes, because the quantity and quality of real-world face-to-face interaction plummeted. Look at the data for U.S. teens, 8th, 10th, 12th graders. Time spent hanging out with friends in person dropped sharply after 2009 and then fell off a cliff after 2012-2013,
Wow.
even before COVID. This is the great rewiring in action. Kids spending drastically less time physically together.
And it's not just about the amount of time, is it? The quality changes too.
Absolutely. Smartphones are attention magnets. Just having a phone out on the table, even if it's off, can make conversations feel less connected, less empathetic. People feel less important if you glance at your phone.
The phubbing effect.
Exactly. So even when teens are physically together, they're often partially distracted, not fully present. Remember that Canadian student's description?
Yeah, the lecture hall full of silent students on their phones.
Right. She called Gen Z incredibly isolated, with shallow friendships mediated by social media. That lack of deep, present connection leads to profound loneliness, even when surrounded by peers. The core harm. Constant phone use erodes both the quantity and quality of vital face-to-face social interaction.
So social deprivation despite hyperconnectivity. That's deeply ironic.
Okay, what's the second foundational harm?
Sleep deprivation. This is another huge one parents struggle with.
Right. Teens are notorious for bad sleep habits.
Well, part of it is biological. Their natural sleep cycle shifts later in puberty. They want to go to bed later and wake up later. But school starts early.
So they get squeezed. Exactly. They end up chronically sleep deprived. And the data shows this got much worse after smartphones became common. The percentage of teens getting less than the recommended 7 hours of sleep climbed sharply after 2013.
Is that definitely linked to phones or just a coincidence?
The evidence strongly points to a causal link. Many studies show high social media use predicts poor sleep, which in turn predicts worse mental health. Experiments confirm it. Restrict late-night screen use for just a couple of weeks, and teens sleep longer, fall asleep faster, and perform better on attention tasks the next day.
And lack of sleep has knock-on effects, right?
Huge ones. Sleep-deprived brains can't learn effectively. Concentration, focus, memory consolidation all suffer. Grades drop. Reaction times slow down, increasing accident risk. And maybe most importantly for mental health, lack of sleep makes you irritable, anxious, and emotionally volatile. It damages relationships. The core harm. Smartphones directly disrupt adolescent sleep, which is critical for brain function, learning, and emotional regulation.
Okay, social deprivation, sleep deprivation. What's a third harm?
Attention fragmentation.
What does that mean?
It means our ability to sustain focus, to concentrate deeply on one thing, is shattered by the constant barrage of notifications and context switching encouraged by phones.
Like digital kryptonite for focus.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Adolescents get hundreds of notifications a day. Texts, snaps, DMs, likes, comments, news alerts, ping, ping, ping. Your brain is constantly being pulled away from whatever you were trying to do.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
It is. And it prevents the kind of deep thinking and focused attention necessary for learning complex skills, reading deeply, or even just having an uninterrupted thought. William James called the opposite of focus attention the confused, dazed, scatterbrained state. That's what constant digital interruption cultivates.
And does this have long-term effects on the brain?
There's growing evidence suggesting that problematic levels of social media or video game use might actually interfere with the development of executive functions. Things like planning, impulse control, and sustained attention, which are still maturing during adolescence. The core harm. The phone's design actively fragments attention, hindering the ability to focus deeply and potentially impairing cognitive development.
Okay, that's deeply concerning. So social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation. What's the fourth foundational harm?
Addiction, or at least addictive-like behaviors and dependencies.
This ties back to the hooked idea.
Exactly. Remember Thorndike's phrase about animal learning, the wearing smooth of a path in the brain, not the decisions of a rational consciousness. That perfectly captures how compulsive screen use often works. It's not always a conscious choice. It becomes an ingrained habit, the pathway carved deep by reinforcement.
And app designers know this.
Oh, absolutely. They use deliberate psychological techniques. Nir Eyl's hooked model lays it out. Trigger, internal or external. Action, scroll, click. Variable reward, the exciting part. Investment, posting, liking, inviting friends, which sets up the next trigger.
That variable reward part, that's the slot machine thing, right?
Precisely. Variable ratio reinforcement. You don't know when the reward, a juicy notification, an interesting post, a win in a game will come, or how many actions it will take to get it. So you keep pulling the lever, keep scrolling the feed. There's no natural stopping point, no off-ramp. In an app with a bottomless feed, it drives compulsive engagement.
And we know companies consciously use this on teams.
We do, thanks to whistleblowers like Frances Haugen at Facebook. The Facebook files revealed internal research acknowledging the particular vulnerability of the teenage brain, especially areas involved in emotion, memory, and reward processing. Their explicit goal, stated internally, was maximizing engagement, keeping users hooked, not necessarily protecting their well-being.
That feels so cynical.
It does. Addiction expert Anna Lemke called the smartphone the modern-day hypodermic needle, delivering digital dopamine 247 for a wired generation. Before 2010, computers weren't always in your pocket. After 2010, adolescents had constant 247 access to these platforms, meticulously designed to hijack their dopamine systems. That timing is key, the constant access. It explains the suddenness and severity of the crisis. We basically handed kids these devices engineered for addiction right during their brain's most sensitive rewiring period. The core harm. The design of many apps leverages powerful psychological principles to foster addiction or dependency, and adolescents are uniquely vulnerable.
Okay, those four harms, social deprivation, sleep deprivation, attention fragmentation, and addiction sound like they affect everyone. But you mentioned earlier that the impact isn't always the same for boys and girls, especially with social media.
That's right. While both sexes are suffering more, the pathways often differ, and the evidence is pretty clear that social media specifically tends to harm girls' mental health more directly and consistently than boys.
More than boys. How significant is that difference?
Studies looking specifically at heavy social media use among girls find a consistent link to poor mental health outcomes, depression, anxiety, self-harm. The correlation size is often around 0.15 to 0.20 though. Now that might not sound huge, but in social science terms, that's comparable to the known links between, say, binge drinking and poor mental health, or marijuana use and poor mental health. It's a meaningful, concerning connection.
Okay, so why does it hit girls harder? What's going on?
There seem to be a few key reasons. First, girls generally spend more time on social media than boys. And critically, they tend to gravitate towards the platforms that research suggests are the worst for mental health. The highly visual ones like Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. We saw a huge jump in female super users 40-plus hours a week after 2010.
More time, and on the tougher platforms. What else?
Second, social comparison. Girls, perhaps more strongly due to socialization or evolutionary pressures, tend to be highly attuned to social connection and belonging, what psychologists sometimes call communion. Social media bombards them with curated, filtered, often unrealistic images of beauty, wealth, and happiness. This relentless exposure triggers intense social comparison. Their internal sociometer, their gauge of social standing and acceptance, takes a nosedive because they constantly feel they fall short of this perceived average. It's a recipe for anxiety and low self-esteem.
That constant comparison sounds exhausting and demoralizing. And what about aggression? Doesn't that play out differently online too?
Yes, that's the third factor, relational aggression. Girls have traditionally been more likely to use indirect aggression, gossip, rumors, social exclusion to harm relationships.
Oh, right.
When social life moved online, this form of aggression found a powerful new amplifier. Studies actually show face-to-face bullying decreased for boys, but increased for girls, especially cyberbullying. Anonymous accounts, viral posts, and the 247 nature of phones in their bedrooms, bathrooms makes this kind of social torment inescapable and incredibly damaging for girls' mental health.
Wow. It follows them everywhere. And you mentioned something really disturbing earlier, emotional contagion, sociogenic illness.
Yes, this is a fourth really concerning aspect. Research on social networks found that emotions can spread, happiness spreads, but depression also spreads. And interestingly, it seems to spread primarily from women to others, both male and female friends. When a man gets depressed, it doesn't have the same ripple effect.
Why the difference?
Possibly because women tend to be more emotionally expressive and discuss feelings more openly. But the implication for social media is huge. These platforms connect vast numbers of girls and young women, potentially creating pathways for negative emotions and even symptoms to spread rapidly. We've seen historical examples like dancing plagues, and more recently, sudden spikes in Tourette's-like Tourette's or dissociative identity disorder symptoms linked directly to viral TikTok videos showing those behaviors. It's like social learning gone haywire.
Good grief. That's unnerving. And there's one more factor for girls.
Yes. The fifth is sexualization and predation. Even preteen girls on platforms like Instagram can receive unwanted sexual messages from adult men. There's also intense pressure from peers, often boys, to share revealing photos. This forces them into a defensive, anxious posture online, constantly navigating threats. It's another major contributor to anxiety.
So, summing up for girls. More time on harmful platforms, intense social comparison, inescapable relational aggression, emotional contagion, and sexualization. It's a heavy burden.
It really is. And ironically, the platforms promising connection often lead to increased loneliness, which spiked more sharply for girls than boys after 2010. The core insight, social media dynamics disproportionately expose girls to harms that trigger anxiety, depression, and profound loneliness.
Okay, that paints a clear, if grim, picture for girls. Now, what about boys? You said they also got more anxious and depressed after 2010, but their path was different. Maybe a slower withdrawal from the real world.
Exactly. Boys' disengagement from the real world seems to have started earlier, maybe back in the 70s, with declines in things like time spent reading or doing homework. But the Great Rewiring in the 2010s definitely accelerated this trend. Richard Reeves talks about the male malaise.
How does that show up in the data?
Well, as we saw, boys' time with friends started dropping even before girls. And you see this growing sense of pessimism. The percentage of boys agreeing, people like me don't have much of a chance for a successful life, crept up slowly for decades, then shot up in the 2010s.
And this connects to the failure to launch idea. Young men struggling with independence.
Yes. We see higher rates of young men in their late 20s still living with parents compared to women. The NEET phenomena, not in education, employment, or training, is predominantly male in many countries. And in extreme cases, like the hikikomori in Japan, young men withdraw almost completely from society, often fueled by intense social anxiety. They get trapped.
And their symptoms change too, right? Not just more anxiety, but less of something else.
Right. Traditionally, boys were more associated with externalizing behaviors, aggression, risk-taking, acting out. Those things actually declined. But internalizing symptoms, anxiety, depression went up, especially after 2010. Consistent with this, Boys' self-reported enjoyment of risk-taking plummeted after 2010. And interestingly, emergency room data shows fewer fall-related fractures for young boys during that time, too.
Suggesting less physical risk-taking in the real world?
Exactly. A withdrawal from physical engagement and risk.
So what's pulling them away digitally? If it's not primarily visual social media, like for girls, what is it? Pornography seems to be a big piece.
It's become a huge factor. The internet didn't invent porn, obviously, but it made infinite, free, hardcore content instantly accessible 24/7. Data from places like Sweden shows daily porn use among older teen boys has risen significantly.
And the harm isn't just addiction.
It's complex. Addiction is one concern. But another major issue is that readily available, hyper-stimulating porn can become an easy substitute for the complexities and vulnerabilities of real-world intimacy. Some research suggests heavy use can make real-world partners seem less appealing, potentially disrupting the motivation to form actual romantic and sexual relationships. Boys might retreat from the uncertain and risky dating world into the predictable, controllable world of online porn.
And that's likely to get worse with AI and the metaverse.
That's a major concern. Imagine perfectly realistic, customizable virtual partners generated by AI. It could further disincentivize the effort and risk involved in pursuing real human connection.
A chilling thought. Okay, to bats porn, what about video games? Are they as bad for boys as social media is for girls?
It's ever more complicated with video games. Not all gaming is harmful, and many games offer cognitive benefits or positive social connections. However, internet gaming disorder is a recognized issue, and it's much more prevalent in boys, maybe 7% versus 1% for girls, according to some studies.
What's the difference between just playing a lot and having a disorder?
The disorder involves significant impairment or distress, neglecting school, work, relationships, health, hygiene because of gaming, and an inability to control it despite negative consequences. It's different from someone who's just highly engaged but maintains balance in their life.
And you mentioned a key difference between gaming and real-world play.
Yes. Even in multiplayer games, the rules, the conflict resolution, it's all managed by the platform. The game enforces the rules. Kids aren't negotiating, compromising, or creating their own systems of governance like they do in unsupervised free play. So they miss out on developing those crucial real-world social skills.
Okay, so different digital paths, maybe visual social media for girls, immersive gaming, and porn for boys, but they end up in a similar place.
It seems so. Both boys and girls became significantly lonelier after 2010. The Great Rewiring pulled them out of stable, embodied communities and into these vast, fluid, often anonymous online networks. This creates what sociologist Emil Durkheim called anomie or normlessness.
Normally.
Yeah, a state where clear moral guidelines and binding social norms break down. Durkheim linked anomie directly to despair and suicide because life starts to feel meaningless without those stable social anchors. So perhaps that's why both boys and girls, despite different digital experiences, ended up feeling more anxious, depressed, and that their lives lacked meaning. The core insight, the virtual world, displaced essential real-world experiences for both sexes, fostering loneliness, anomie, and despair, albeit through somewhat different digital activities.
Hearing all this, it's easy to feel, I don't know, kind of hopeless. Like the genie's out of the bottle, it's too late. But we change things when we find out they're harmful, right? Think about seatbelts or lead paint or dangerous toys. We recall products, we regulate. Why does this feel so intractable?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And you're right, we do act when harm becomes clear. The feeling of helplessness here often comes from what social scientists call collective action problems or social dilemma.
What does that mean?
It means situations where everyone acting in their own perceived self-interest leads to a worse outcome for the whole group. Think about the individual child, like Emily, who felt she had to be on Instagram to fit in, not to miss out. Or the individual parent who feels they have to give their kid a smartphone because everyone else has one.
Right. If you're the only one without it, you're excluded.
Exactly. And the tech companies, they're incentivized to grab users, even underage ones, before competitors do. So individual rational choices, when made by everyone, create this negative spiral. Parents feel trapped. Kids feel pressured. Companies race to the bottom.
And the overprotection thing plays into this, too. The fear of letting your kids play outside.
Absolutely. If you're the only parent on the block letting your 8-year-old walk to the park alone, you risk judgment, maybe even a call to child services from a concerned neighbor, even if the actual risk is tiny. So you keep him close, even if you believe independence would be better. It feels too risky to go against the grain alone.
So individual action feels impossible or too costly. The solution then has to be
Acting together, collective action. If enough parents in a community agree to delay smartphones, the peer pressure on kids decreases. If a whole school goes phone-free, no single student feels excluded. If neighborhoods encourage unsupervised play, it becomes normalized again, reducing the fear of judgment. We need to change the environment together. The core insight. This is a collective trap, and escaping it requires coordinated collective action.
Okay, so if we need to act together, where do we start? Sean Parker, Facebook's first president, admitted they basically knew they were exploiting vulnerabilities and did it anyway. That's pretty shocking. How do we make companies and governments change course?
Governments have a crucial role in changing the incentives for tech companies. Just like safety regulations transform the auto industry, we need policies that prioritize child well-being online. There are 4 key areas.
Okay, what's the first?
First, assert a duty of care. Governments need to legally require online platforms to prioritize children's safety and well-being in their design and operation. The UK's Age-Appropriate Design Code, AADC, is a good model. It's not just a guideline, it's law.
A legal responsibility to protect kids online. Makes sense. Second,
Raise the age of Internet adulthood to 16. The current U.S. law, COPPA, sets it at 13, based on a law from 1998. That was before social media even really existed as we know it. 13 is way too young.
why 16?
16 makes more sense developmentally. Kids are more mature, and crucially, they're past that peak sensitive period for social media harms, especially for girls, around 11, 13. It also aligns better with other milestones like driving. And this needs real enforcement, making it illegal for companies to sign up under 16s without verifiable parental consent.
Okay, but enforcement is the tricky part, right? How do you verify age online without creating a privacy nightmare, like needing government ID for everything?
That's the third and maybe most critical piece. Facilitate age verification. We need better methods. Third-party services could verify age without sharing identity with the platform itself. But the most promising solution might be device-based verification.
How would that work?
Parents could essentially flag a device, a phone, tablet, laptop, as belonging to a minor. This flag may be built into the operating system or hardware, signals to age-restricted sites and apps. This user is a child. Do not grant access without parental permission.
Ah, so the check happens at the device level.
Right. It solves the collective action problem for parents. If most kids' devices block underage access by default, the pressure to join early evaporates. It avoids inconveniencing adults because their devices aren't flagged. And parents could opt out if they choose, maintaining control. It's practical and privacy-preserving.
That actually sounds workable. Okay, duty of care, age 16, better verification. What's the fourth government action?
Fourth, encourage phone-free schools. Governments can provide funding for things like secure phone lockers or lockable pouches, like Yonder pouches, and support research on the academic and mental health benefits of phone-free school environments. These 4 steps together could really shift the landscape, protecting kids from addictive designs. The core insight. Governments have the power to set new rules that force tech companies to prioritize child safety over engagement.
Okay, let's shift to schools. You used that phrase, standing on a whale, fishing for minnows. What are the whales for schools?
The 2 biggest things schools can do, the absolute game changers, are 1, go truly phone-free for the entire school day, and 2, bring back far more unsupervised play and childhood independence. If schools tackle these 2 whales, the positive impact on student well-being and learning could be immense, likely dwarfing the effects of smaller initiatives.
Let's take phone-free schools first. Lots of schools say phones are banned in class. You're saying that's not enough.
It's nearly useless. Honestly, if phones are in pockets or backpacks, kids find ways to use them bathroom breaks, between classes, under the desk. Teachers end up playing whack-a-mole. It's stressful and ineffective.
So what's the alternative?
A clear, simple policy. Phones are often away for the entire school day. When students arrive, phones go into a locker or a locked pouch, and they get them back at dismissal. No ambiguity, no policing needed during the day.
What about academics and emergencies?
UNESCO confirmed last year what teachers already knew. Mobile phones in schools reduce learning and increase disruption. We saw U.S. test scores decline after 2012, coinciding with smartphone adoption. Phone-free schools report improved focus, better social interaction in hallways and at lunch, and improved mental health. Students are simply more present. As for emergencies, adults have phones. And in a real crisis, kids are safer listening to trained adults than being distracted by calls and texts from panicked parents.
Okay, makes sense. Now, the second whale, making schools playful. This sounds like the antidote to safetyism.
It absolutely is. Schools have increasingly squeezed out recess and free playtime in pursuit of more academic instruction time. But it backfires. Play-deprived kids are more anxious, less focused, and actually learn less.
So more play helps learning.
Definitely. Schools need to prioritize more unsupervised play and recess, longer recess periods. Crucially, not taking away recess as punishment. The pediatricians strongly advise against that. Maybe open playgrounds before school, start after-school play clubs, mixed ages, simple equipment like balls and chalk, minimal adult interference, just basic supervision like a lifeguard.
Have schools actually tried this?
Yes. One administrator who started a play club reported huge drops in truancy, bus behavior problems, and office referrals. His summary: students are happier, kinder, have fewer behavior problems. Play works.
Wow. That's compelling. Any other play-related ideas for schools?
The Let Grow Project homework assignment is fantastic. Kids in K-8 get the assignment. Go home and do something new on your own. Walk the dog alone, make dinner, run an errand. It builds real competence and confidence, and more outdoor nature play. Time in nature is incredibly beneficial for cognitive, social, and emotional development. Greener school environments reduce stress.
And you mentioned schools re-engaging boys specifically.
Yes, addressing that decline in boys' academic success is important. Encouraging male role models, valuing vocational skills alongside academics, celebrating different kinds of intelligence, these can help. But starting early with phone-free, playful elementary and middle schools benefits all kids immensely and costs very little. The core insight for schools: making the school day phone-free and rich in free play are the most powerful levers for improving well-being and learning.
Okay, finally, let's talk about parents. It's tough for individual parents, as we discussed. You mentioned the shift in parenting itself from being a gardener to a carpenter.
Yeah, that's Alison Gopnik's great analogy. Modern parenting sometimes feels like this intense project to shape and mold the child into a specific, superior product, like a carpenter building furniture. Historically, it was more like gardening. You provide the right conditions, good soil, water, light, and trust the child to grow and flourish in their own way. We need more gardener parents.
So how can parents be better gardeners in this digital age?
Be first, and maybe hardest. Model good behavior. Be mindful of your own phone habits. Put your phone away during meals, conversations. Don't give your kids or your partner continuous partial attention. Kids notice.
Ouch. Yeah. What else?
Second, more unsupervised play and independence. Actively look for opportunities to let your kids navigate the world without you hovering. Practice letting them go out of sight. Send them on small errands, maybe with a letgrow.org I'm Not Lost card if you're worried about neighbors. Encourage phone-free sleepovers. Organize walking or biking groups to school, or even just the drive to 5 idea, drop them 5 minutes away to walk the rest.
And working with other parents.
Yes. Form playborhoods. Talk to your neighbors. Organize simple block parties or regular weekend playtimes in a park. Consistency is key. Even if only a few kids show up at first, it can build momentum.
Okay. What about managing screen time itself?
Third, less and better screen experience. Very young kids really don't need smartphones or tablets much, if at all. Wait as long as possible. Use parental controls. Set clear time limits. Have no device zones like bedrooms and the dinner table. Consider a weekly digital Sabbath. A screen-free day and maybe screen-free weeks during vacations, especially out in nature.
How do you know if use becomes problematic?
Fourth, look for signs of addiction or problematic use. Is your child using screens to escape problems? Are they irritable when they can't use them? Do they constantly want to cut down but can't? Are they losing sleep, missing activities, letting grades slip because of screen time? If you see those signs, it's time for a serious change, maybe a digital detox, and potentially seeking professional help.
And the big one, social media accounts.
Fifth, and this is crucial, delay social media accounts until 16. Let them get through the most vulnerable part of puberty first. And we're talking about active accounts on platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, the ones with personalized feeds, constant notifications, and pressure to post. That's different from just occasionally watching a YouTube video on a shared device.
What about older teens? How do you foster independence then?
Sixth, foster responsibility and independence as teens. Give them real chores and responsibilities around the house, cooking, cleaning, errands.
Yeah.
Combat that feeling of my life is not very useful. Encourage part-time jobs. Look into summer wilderness programs, gap years, maybe exchange programs, experiences away from home, navigating challenges independently. Build incredible competence.
Anything else parents can do?
Seventh, educate your team. Don't just impose rules, explain why. Use resources like the Center for Humane Technology's Youth Toolkit to talk about how algorithms work, how platforms are designed to hook them. Knowledge is empowering. And finally, eighth, Rethink location tracking. It feels like a safety net, but constantly monitoring your teen's location can undermine their confidence and increase your anxiety. Trusting them to navigate situations like Max getting himself home late at night builds resilience in a way tracking never can.
So it comes back to trusting them, letting them experience the world, fostering that free-range childhood, even when it makes us anxious as parents.
Exactly. It takes courage for parents to overcome their own anxiety, but giving kids independence is one of the greatest gifts for fostering competent, confident, less anxious adults. The core insight for parents: be a gardener, model good habits, prioritize real-world independence, delay social media, and trust your kids. Hashtag outro.
This has been an incredibly insightful and, frankly, quite sobering deep dive into the Great Rewiring and the anxious generation. Just to recap the 4 big reforms we discussed: no smartphones before high school, no social media before 16, phone-free schools, and much, much more independence and unsupervised play for kids.
And remember, these aren't just 4 separate ideas. They work together synergistically. They address those collective action problems that keep us stuck. Every parent who delays a smartphone makes it easier for the next parent. Every school that goes phone-free helps all its students focus and connect. If communities implement these changes together, we genuinely could see significant improvements in youth mental health within just a couple of years.
That offers real hope. So the call to action seems clear.
It is. Speak up and link up. Remember that smoke-filled room experiment. If everyone stays passive, looking to others, nobody acts, even when danger is obvious. The smoke from this digital transformation is filling our kids' lives. We need to break the bystander effect. Don't wait. Speak up. Talk about this with friends, family, your school principal. Share what you've learned. And link up. Find other concerned parents or educators. Work together. We're not helpless when we act collectively.
A powerful message. And as we wrap up, one final provocative thought to leave you with. Consider how this phone-based life, constantly pulling our attention towards the trivial, the performative, the often negative, might be affecting us at a deeper level. Some might say it pulls us downward, filling that innate human yearning for meaning, connection, maybe even transcendence, that God-shaped hole with fleeting, often trivial and degrading content.
It echoes what ancient philosophers and wisdom traditions have told us for centuries. The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts. So the challenge for all of us, for you listening, is, how can you consciously choose your inputs? How can you reclaim focus, depth, and genuine human connection for yourself and for the young people in your life? Knowing the profound impact these choices have, what will you allow to color your mind and theirs?